All right, my September prediction revealed. I see two possible scenarios that I think have a very high likelihood of playing out this September. Neither of the two are bearish for the rest of the year. Now, my first expectation, and I think the highest conviction prediction that I have, and not that I'm one to make predictions, that's not the core, thesis of my strategy. It's really not about predicting, it's more so reacting. But if I was to make a prediction, the one that I would lean with the heaviest weighting towards would be the fact that we have a hard flush early in this month that may have already happened late August into September already. And we see a slow and steady rebound for the rest of the month that really just throws everyone offside while they're waiting for this massive September effect capitulation to play out in markets. If we don't have that, I think the second highest probability outlook, and this would be more of a bearish take, would be a sideways and choppy bleed for the rest of the month. I don't think we necessarily need to draw down a lot further because we've already sold off a decent amount from mid-August highs, both crypto and equities. But we may see a slow bleed that just sort of, has people wondering, when is this sell-off going to accelerate further? Let me sell more. And this would be maximum pain for short-term holders who are, under pressure because they bought too high and they're, deciding whether they should hold or they should stay in the market. I would say that both paths, based off of current macro conditions and what we can sort of see as being leading indicators for where liquidity is going, tell us that Q4 is going to be bullish regardless. So, I would actually be more confident in October being not that strong of a month versus September, because once you get into October, you've already had, all of the sort of news from rate cuts, whether they're confirmed or not, the size of the cut, the tonality of Jerome Powell when he speaks and what he mentions, it's all priced in after that event happens, right? So maybe October is where we actually have a proper flush and people even throw in the towel on the bull market in October. But I think September has some bullish price action in store for us, most likely. Now, if we look at Bitcoin today, what you can see is that we have been rebounding off of the lows that we put in over basically the weekend. I guess we tagged the lows briefly on Monday. It's now Wednesday, September 3rd. By the time you're watching this, I'm not sure where it'll be, but if you're watching it today, it's the 3rd or it's the 4th. And Bitcoin has been rebounding off these lows pretty well so far. So you have everyone down here calling for, max pain, bull market's over. Then we've started to rebound a little bit and people are going, what's Bitcoin doing? Interestingly, the S&P 500 sold off quite aggressively yesterday. And as soon as the market opened, Bitcoin started to rebound and the S&P 500 was bleeding and sort of trading sideways. We ended up closing the day in the green from a candle perspective, down only about 0.5%. So not a huge sell-off. So the candle closed green with some buy pressure on it. So you can see from where we opened on the day to where we closed, we ended up, green, but there still is a gap up here to be potentially filled. We didn't even make it down to the 50. So we kind of just basically put in a lower high, a higher low from where we were in mid-August when we had our last sort of pullback in this index. So that's one factor. But I think the most important factor to watch is actually the dollar. If the dollar had been rebounding aggressively all summer, I'd be much more cautious on this quarter upcoming. But it's only been trading sideways and allowing global liquidity to grow throughout the process. If you go back to the end of the previous bull market, what did you start to see happen summer of the post-halving year? Well, the US dollar's uptrend started to reestablish itself and get quite aggressive. And by the time we saw all-time highs in Bitcoin's price, right around here in November, the dollar had already been rallying for, multi-month period, putting in higher highs and higher lows, and then continued to rally from that point forward. That is an environment that scares me for holding risk assets. This current environment is not one that scares me for holding risk assets. It still looks like something out of this playbook where we've had the dollar weakening, cycle exploding in terms of risk assets doing well. I don't see a massive risk here with that being said. And, global liquidity, let me show you another chart that I really like, has been trending higher. And if you put it on that 90-day offset that everyone likes to talk about, that 3-month leading effect that it has on markets, supposedly it also tells us that markets are headed higher into Q4 as well. As of right now, it doesn't really show any signs of potentially pullback until end of November. So I'm not going to say this is the Bible when it comes to markets and this is the gospel that we must follow, but I would say that there's not a lot of massive risks that are jumping out to me. We do have some correlations. When gold spikes, usually markets are pretty risk off. But if I look at the futures market today, yes, gold's done well yesterday and today. SQQ down, reversing all of yesterday's pump back up so far. So we'll see how it opens. S&P futures are in the green. I'm not seeing anything that's terribly concerning. I mean, the last two times we had rate cuts after basically the year before that, not seeing any cuts, and we were in a relatively strong environment, was 2024. So we can go back and we can look here. Last September, we had a pretty much a quick rinse into the beginning of the month and then a pop until the end where we closed green in September. And then the next example of this that we could look at, we'd have to go all the way back to 1998 to see a year where we didn't get a rate cut with strength, and then we saw a cut in September. 97, 98, boom, 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 98. Here we go, right? Here's September of 1998. Again, what we saw was pretty bearish summer. And then we started to rebound in September. We had a rate cut. September was a green month. We did come back down and double bottom in October, but Q4 was strong for the rest of the year, right? So Q4 was strong in 98. Q4, I think, will be strong in 2025 as well, based off of what we saw in 2024. Right, you can go back and you can see here, September, strong 2024, Santa Claus rally, all of Q4. So that is my, prediction. Although I hate, predicting where I think the market's going to go from a perspective of, hey, this is my thesis and I'm sticking to it no matter what. I have some points of invalidation for this, but overall, this is the idea I'm leaning towards. That the market looks strong. We've come back down. We've retested previous highs. We've bounced off of them so far. This has been the playbook, right? We come up and we sort of put in a high, put in a lower high, put in a lower low a couple of times, and then we start to reverse pretty strong to the upside. It even happened back down here, putting in lower lows. And where did we end up bottoming? Right on previous all-time highs from March, right? Right on previous all-time highs from in this case, December and January. So I don't see a lot of reasons to get bearish on the market right now, even though everyone is quite fearful on social media. But I would start to be concerned about the market if you see Bitcoin trading below 105K, because then that tells us that we can't actually hold these previous all-time highs that we've struggled to bounce and sort of hold upon previously. That's where I would get cautious on. If I was a short-term holder of Bitcoin, let's say I didn't have a long-term vision for my positioning, that's where I could get more concerned and probably not want to be holding any altcoins past that point if we lose that range. But another thing I'm seeing, bounce off of the bull market support band for right now, right? Retest off of the 21-week EMA, SMA, and a bounce. So, until we lose this bull market support band with a weekly close below it, many other factors, maybe a spike in the dollar. Let's have a look at the dollar here. Then I'm not seeing it. Yesterday's spike in the dollar looks like it's selling off today. Again, we did have a little bit more of a move up, but it's selling off. So, conditions, in my opinion, look bullish. Not to rule a rotation out of the picture from Mag 7 towards the rest of the S&P 493, I should say. But for general market conditions, I see everything looking quite positive for right now. And if that changes, of course, everyone in BNB is going to be first to know. But at some point, I'll come on and touch about it publicly here on YouTube and on Twitter as well. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, guys, this is my Twitter. I'm just going to start posting on here again. I've never taken this too seriously or consistently. So make sure to drop a comment if you're liking the tweets and check them out. And I'll catch you guys for my next update of the week, which will be later on the weekend. We'll go through the technicals and see where we close the week post NFP. Cheers.